Hey everybody, welcome back to Breakfast with Bob from Challenge Daytona and the PTO 2020 Championship. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you by Captiva Spine, John Hall Chevrolet, USA Triathlon, Foundation Risk Partners in the PTO, the Pro Triathletes Organization. Our next guest, Mr. Cody Beals from Ontario, Canada. How you doing, Cody?
Not bad, Bob. I think I've had better years, but I'm
Yes.
just grateful to be here.
You know, one of the things that you mentioned before we chatted, is sometimes you have to lose something to appreciate it. And not being able to race this year and do the things we love to do, I think all of us will really appreciate it when it comes back.
Absolutely. You know, I turned 30 this year. It was a cataclysmic year for a lot of reasons. I almost feel like I had a bit of a third life crisis. And after 7 years as a pro in the sport, I kind of was teetering on the brink of wondering what was next. You know, would I leave the sport and move on to something else? Because it still feels kind of like a side quest in my life at some points. So really, I had to lose triathlon to truly appreciate what I had. And I realize now that if I left the sport, I would definitely leave it with regret. And really, nothing scares me more than that.
Yeah, and here you are, a guy, 2012, your physics degree from Queen's University, and could have gone in a lot of different directions. What got you to head down the triathlon path?
I think it's a pretty common story in triathlon. We all have fascinating backstories, and we all could be pulled in lots of different directions. Triathlon almost fell into my lap. I mean, I grew up doing endurance sports, but never dreamed of being a professional athlete. I would have scoffed at the idea as a little kid. And I started racing triathlon after suffering through a physics degree I didn't particularly enjoy, and pretty quickly found success. And thankfully, I had people around me who literally twisted my arm to take my elite card. That was 7 years ago, and I kind of wake up some days and I'm like, how did this almost a decade flash by now?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So as a guy who's pretty meticulous about his training, talk a little bit about, you're a guy who uses power meters, and how do you use some of the science to make yourself better?
So going back to the start of my pro career, I was self-coaching. I was making a whole host of mistakes. I was messing up my physical health. I was messing up my mental health, leaning way too heavily on triathlon as a crutch to deal with a lot of things. And I was really deluding myself with the approach I was taking to training. So getting a power meter was really like a turning point in my career. And I can't understate this. Like, it's the single most indispensable piece of equipment for me.
Really?
Because it is a totally objective perspective. So you can kid yourself what you think you're doing in training, but the power meter, the raw, cold, hard numbers, they don't lie. So it really reframed the entire way I approach my training in the sport.
And what brand do you use?
I use 4Eyes.
So it's fascinating to me when I hear you say that, because I've never used a power meter, and I've probably been lying to myself for years going, I am killing it. I'm dominating. But the reality is that a lot of times we're sort of scared to know real numbers, right? Because it's real, and it tells you sometimes that you're not doing everything you can do. Does it make you more efficient in how you train?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a time and place for it. Leading up to an event like this, when I'm on the clock, every minute of training is tightly scripted. It's accounted for in terms of power numbers and minutes. But frankly, in the off season, I'm going to take out my beater bike that doesn't have a power meter on it and just go unplugged for a month or two and really enjoy the heck out of that.
So how have you we're so used to, okay, I did a race, now I recover, now I do a build, then I go to another race. All that's been gone. How have you dealt with that?
Not well. I've been pretty open about that. It was a tough year for mental health, and as much as I like to pretend that a lot of my self-identity isn't wrapped up in the sport, it was really challenging this year to have that taken away from all of us. And so for me, my play was to kind of distance myself from the sport a little bit once the scope of the pandemic became apparent. Just take a bit of a breather, and I almost looked at it as a sabbatical after 7 years in the sport. And I think that'll set me up really well for a strong back half of the season, now in December, racing later than I ever have before, because I kind of eased off the gas over the summer a little bit.
And being here with a lot of ITU athletes you've probably never raced before, right? 70.3 athletes, full Ironman guys, $1.1 million at stake. In a year where we didn't know if there'd be any racing, all of a sudden we got the Super Bowl, right here at Daytona. How excited are you to be able to go out there, one, to just race, but also race with some of the greatest athletes who've ever participated in the sport?
I think it's going to be an extremely intriguing event. I mean, there are probably 20 men who could be on the podium here.
No question.
And I've seen a cyclical pattern in my career where, especially at the end of an Olympic cycle, there's always speculation that the ITU athletes are going to sweep in and embarrass us long course guys.
Right.
I just did my first draft legal race this summer, so I definitely don't have an ITU background. That was interesting.
I was going to say, yeah.
Time and time again, we see some ITU athletes who are quite successful in long course, but by and large, those predictions don't come true. The long course guys hold their own. So I'm really eager to take some ITU scalps here and hopefully represent the long course men well.
Well, and what I think this is a strong person's course. I think at the end of the day, people are like, oh, it's flat and fast. I'm like, no. If it's a circle, there's wind for half of this thing. You're going to have wind in your face, and you're going to have wind at your back. And you're going to need to be in the aero position with a 20-meter draft rule, nobody to sit on, for basically 50 miles. So no matter, you're going to have a group of really fast, probably ITU guys out of the water, but then it's going to be fascinating watching what happens next when you guys get on the track.
Absolutely. And that 20-meter draft zone, that's a really, really
Huge.
fundamental difference from the typical 12-meter draft zone we're used to. In fact, some of my aero testing with 4Eyes shows that even at 12 meters, you're getting a significant draft benefit. And I could show you power file after power file to back that. You're saving 10, 20, even 30% depending on wind conditions. 20 meters, that just drops off exponentially to basically zero. So it really is going to change the dynamic on the bike, and I don't think we'll see the typical pack-based riding that we're used to. It's going to blow everything apart.
I think it will, and what's fascinating, again, with the 20 meters, even if people are at 15, 16 meters, they're still way less than if it was a 10-meter rule.
Absolutely, and I know we've got an ace official team here, so I sure hope they're calling penalties on those 16-meter creeping up type of situations.
Cody, what do you look at is a breakthrough race for you, a race that told you, okay, I can make a living in this sport?
Oh, Bob, I'd have to go back to two instances. The first was the initial time I raced the half distance, and I went under 4 hours. I was still an amateur, and even then I kind of had no idea people made a living doing this. So that's when people went, aha, maybe you should make the jump up to the pro ranks.
Right.
So that was kind of a turning point. And the next had to be winning my debut Ironman at Mont Tremblant in 2018.
Breaking
the course record as well. That was just a dream day. Looking back on it, it still almost feels surreal. I was in like a dreamlike state the entire day.
And that's such a beautiful venue too.
Oh, I couldn't have asked for a better, more spectacular venue for that to happen. Just the crowd energy there, everything there is fantastic.
How you mentioned that physical health, mental health, this has been a tough year. Sharing that, you've been very honest over the years, saying, listen, I've dealt with depression, I've dealt with issues, which I think is so important for the people who are watching, thinking that our guys are all supermen and superwomen, and we just go out, you guys just go out and you crush it every day and nothing bothers you. Was it hard to be that honest and raw and share?
I would say no. It's come really naturally to me, and I've kind of edged up to the point where I can be really genuine with my followers about where my mental state is at.
Yeah.
And every time I've opened up, even just a sliver, people are so receptive to that. I think it's so much more engaging, and it resonates with people so much more than creating this facade of bravado and unfeelingness that I think a lot of pros feel like they have to do. So I've received the best response from the community when I'm my most vulnerable, after my toughest days out on the course, the toughest months in my life. And I think a lot of us find our way to triathlon to deal with some inner demons. So it's not an uncommon story. And especially this year, everyone I've talked to on a personal level, no one's been immune to struggling this year in one way or another. All of our lives have been disrupted. All of our social interactions have been disrupted. So everyone's struggling. And I think it resonates with people to see people like me who are being honest about that.
You've been involved with the sport, like you said, 7-8 years. And in that time, I mean, I'm sure, like myself, you've had people come to you and I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you, and never comes to fruition. You've had the PTO pretty much come out of nowhere in this last year and say, hey, even though there's no racing, we're going to take care of you guys. Even though there's no other races in the world, we're going to put on the Super Bowl of triathlon here at Daytona. How important has that been, just feeling that someone is there for you?
Oh, it's a relief. I think that triathlon was teetering on the brink of going one of two directions. I hear older pros lament kind of the golden age of the sport that happened a decade ago by their account. And it would be sad to think of triathlon in this decaying state where our best days are behind us.
Right.
And I could have seen it heading that direction based on the state of things.
Yeah.
So when the PTO came out of the scene, there was initially some skepticism, myself included.
Absolutely.
I'm old enough now to have seen a few attempts to get something like this up off the ground. But pretty quickly it became apparent that the vision, the backing, the funding, which is a key piece, the model.
Huge part, yes.
It was all coming together in a way like we'd never seen before. So at the start of this year, I wouldn't have guessed this, but at this point, I'm feeling more optimistic than ever about the state of triathlon, even despite the COVID situation this year. And like I said, I was teetering on the brink of maybe leaving the sport, but now I can easily see a path to another wonderful decade racing triathlon.
It's fascinating because when I sit here and I look behind me and I'm going, this is what our sport has always needed, is a venue where we don't have to worry about getting hit by cars, right? Where you could do a full week of camps, clinics, getting people into the sport, short events, long events, and not have to worry about safety issues, because that's been a big problem, I'm sure, up in Canada and the U.S. When you're putting on races, you're putting people in the water, and that's scary, and people are paying a lot of insurance fees for that. And the same with the bike, people going 30 miles an hour. It's very tough to be a race director. But triathlon festival type of events like this, that could be our future.
Yeah, absolutely, and nothing scares me more than events like that beyond my control, where I could get taken out by a car when I'm racing. So
right, with open roads.
There's a reason I'm known for riding the trainer in my grungy basement so much. It's first and foremost for safety.
Right.
And so I love a course like this where I can put my head down and not even think twice about other risks.
I love it. Hey, Cody, best of luck this weekend. I think you're going to have a great race, and I just it's always great to catch up with you. I always learn a lot every time we get to chat.
Oh, thanks, Bob. You're too kind.
Cody Beals has been our guest, everybody. Again, Breakfast with Bob, Challenge Daytona PTO 2020 Championship. Hold on. We will be right